Okay, welcome everyone to our advocacy youth panel discussion today. Today promises to be a very interesting and productive discussion about the issues that some of our younger members have and how they feel AEBC can assist them as well. So the before I do the line, I'll just go over the flow for the morning. So that the Linda Bartram and I'm Richard Marion, will ask the panelists a series of questions and get their answers to those questions on a number in a couple different topic areas. And then at the end, we'll open it up to the floor to the audience for some general Q&A. And then after that, if there's time, Linda or Lee will talk a bit about the AEBC's youth strategy. So that's the flow of the morning. So I'm going to get started first and deliver the time acknowledgement. Today, we are gathered here on the lands of many Indigenous peoples across what we know as Canada. And I specifically am on the land of the Kwantlen, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations, the traditional unceded occupied territories of those people. Lulu Island, also known as Richmond, has been an area that has been claimed by many different nations because prior to the settlers arriving, it was basically a land that would frequently flood because it's in the middle of the Fraser River Delta, and as a result, it became very fertile land for harvesting and gathering various fruits and berries and other vegetables. So take a moment to reflect the lands that you're on and acknowledge and give thanks to those that have graciously allowed us to continue to live, work, and play on these lands. So I will turn it over to Linda now to introduce the panelists and allow them to introduce themselves and talk briefly about themselves.
Yeah, good morning. My name is Linda Bartram. I'm the first Vice President of AEBC, and again, like to welcome all of you here today. And I'd like to welcome our four panelists who've graciously agreed to tell us a little bit about themselves and to share their advocacy experiences and help us become a little bit more aware of what younger adults, and I use that term loosely, um, but folks that are younger than most of us who are running AEBC at the moment. And we want to move our sort of youth strategy engagement agenda forward, and this is one of the ways that we thought we could do that. So I'd like to introduce our first panelist, Amanda Cape. Amanda, if you'd like to just tell us a little bit about yourself, and yeah, welcome.
Sure. Thanks, Linda. So, my name is Amanda Cape. I am originally from Montreal, but now live in Fredericton, New Brunswick. My background is in social work. My educational background is in social work, but now I'm currently looking for work opportunities, possibly in customer service or in accessibility testing, different areas. And potentially social work, but less so at the moment. I've been blind since birth, and yeah, I'll stick with that for now.
Do you have any activities that you're involved in with other groups to do with advocacy or blindness related groups? Are you on any advisory committees in the area where you live?
Not currently. I'm on the Radical Hospitality Committee of my partner's church. So we help plan and organize events for the church with diversity and inclusion at the forefront of things that we organize.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to Brandon Schiffoni. Morning,
Thank
Brandon.
You. Thank you very much, Linda. And it's been a long time since I've been called young, so I really appreciate you this morning.
It's all relative.
My name is Brandon Schiffoni. I am logistically, I guess I'd be considered deafblind. I am completely blind, but I wasn't born that way. I had a quite moderate vision loss, but as time kind of went on, it sort of degraded and deteriorated until I was left with basically just light and shadow. Um, and I also have a pretty significant hearing loss. So while I'm not maybe conventionally deafblind, I think and on paper it'd technically be considered that. My educational background first began in journalism, and after a while, I kind of figured that that really wasn't what I wanted to do. So I switched over to behavioral psychology. I'm now a month away from finishing my master's in social work, and I recently just got a position at my practicum placement. So I'll be transitioning right from that master's degree to private practice psychotherapy. So I'm really looking forward to that. As far as your advisory committee questions, I'm not really. I have done various projects with the AEBC, but for the most part, I just kind of try to advocate and be the voice for blindness kind of wherever I go and whoever I communicate with.
Okay, thank you very much, Brandon. We'll move on to Josh. Josh Simmons, good morning and
Good
welcome.
morning, and good morning, everyone. With Simmons, speaking to you from a nice sunny day here in Montreal. I'm a mature student, having gone back to school after spending about 20 years in mental health as a psychologist. I'm now doing a doctoral work at the University of Montreal's School of Vision Sciences. I have retinitis pigmentosa, so my vision has deteriorated to the point of legal blindness in the past 10 years. My research is looking at how newly referred individuals cope in response to the vision rehabilitation process over time. And in terms of the advocacy aspect, I've been involved in dragon boating. I mean, I know it's a long boat with 2 by 10, so 20 people all together with a steers person and a greaser in the front. I've been involved in that for almost as long as I've been in practice as a health. And I have been involved in Dragon Boat Canada's co-chair of their para committee for those with disabilities on their safety committee. And I currently co-manage a one of the Dragon Boat teams for those with disabilities of various types of vision, sensory, developmental, psychological, as a psychosocial support for many people who are making the transition of various types of disability. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you, Josh. Okay, and our last panelist is Wajiha Aegis. Good morning, Wajiha, and welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Wajiha, and I'm legally blind. I have very little light perception at this time. I lost my eyesight about, I want to say 9 years ago to diabetic retinopathy. I was born fully sighted and was in my last year of um, medical school. I was going through D pharmacy when I lost my vision completely, and that was a career crisis. So once and that was back home in Pakistan, that was not in Canada. So of course, going through the whole adjustment was a bit difficult because we didn't have the resources that we have here in Canada. Um, After moving to Canada, I um, received some rehabilitation support through Pacific Training Center for the Blind and um, graduated in 2021. I'm currently in Barrie, Ontario, which is to the north of Toronto, about an hour away. And right now, I am working as a program coordinator for the CNIB Come to Work program. And just last year, I received my certification as a career development practitioner. So I think it really is something that I'm very passionate about, is helping people with vision loss being able to obtain gainful employment.
And has that brought you onto any advisory committees, your work with CNIB, regarding accessibility?
I mean, not like that, but of course, we work very closely with advocacy at CNIB department, advocacy department. So that is something, because of course we have have those discussions where we're talking to different employers, businesses about accommodations and stuff like that. So we do have to either have that conversation directly with the participant, or sometimes have a conversation with the advocacy department. So at this point, it's just this, but other than that, not really.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll pass it over to Richard now.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much. It's great to know more about all of you. And so the next section that I've got is barriers in self-advocacy, and what issues have you like faced in those areas. And I'm gonna just randomly pick a panelist. So I'll start with Brandon Schiffoni.
All right. So most of what I've experienced lately, as far as difficulties with my visual impairment, is really centered around, um, in some ways, infrastructure, but in a lot of ways, kind of just like doing things online, schoolwork especially, and when you get into sort of social work and therapy and kind of community organizations like that, there's a lot of logistics around how we sort of operate within the processes. Everything's got to be confidential. Everything's got to work within the systems and structures that the companies have set up. And this is for schools as well. You know, they all have their own sort of systems, but these things aren't really built with blind people in at the forefront of their thought processes. And it's kind of weird to me too, because social work, you know, you're working with all different kinds of marginalized communities, and disability being one of them. But it almost seems as if like the people with blindness are put on the back burner even in that sort of realm. So it's interesting to me to kind of run into these barriers with my schooling. So um, in a lot of ways, it's really, you know, for me, it's just about being vocal and having these conversations with people as I've gone along, and sort of advocating on a case by case. You know, I haven't had anything that I would say has been really debilitating, luckily, at least lately. But as far as just working around my blindness and these particular systems, it's all about sort of allowing yourself to connect with the people around you, and you know, really being kind of open about the fact that, hey, I need assistance, and you know, I'd really appreciate it if you could help me out in that regard, and kind of building those relationships, like, and to a point where uh, things become cohesive, and it's really just a team effort to kind of get things done.
And so, did you have any specific steps that you took to remove any of the barriers, and what were the results after you advocated for yourself about barriers that you may have faced, specifically in what you mentioned to do with your education and social work?
Yeah, sure. So one example recently that really sticks out to me is I do some volunteer work with the Victim Services of York Region. So we do a lot of like crisis response, helping people who are you know, have experienced you know, sudden death or violent crime, or kind of look for resources within the community to help them sort of get relief from the experience that they've undergone. So um, they were not in any way set up to have a blind volunteer. Like, their systems are very inaccessible. They're very heavily regulated as opposed to how you do things, the way you do them. And I feel like this is kind of one of the things that a lot of people I speak to about this topic are sort of scared of, is sort of recognizing the hierarchy within these systems. You know, you may have someone that's your boss, but there's always going to be someone above them and above them and above them. And you know, you can try to problem solve with the people sort of directly above you, but if you don't have your problem resolved within that sort of framework, then you have to be willing to sort of climb that ladder a little bit and find out where can we develop a solution here. So we eventually set up a team between myself and one of the volunteer coordinators, where I was able to get my cases directly from her as opposed to having to get the papers and do something to read the papers because I obviously can't read print at this stage. And everything is sort of printed out and put into like a pile or a copy because they need to keep it confidential and off network. So we worked out a system where I get my cases directly from the volunteer coordinator. I work at a computer that is not connected to the internet. I do all the work. I take all my case notes after it's all said and done. I put it on a flash drive. I bring it over to her. She enters it into the system and destroys the documents, and that keeps everything confidential. It allows me to work effectively, and it was really all built by the willingness to kind of speak to the people about the reality of your situation.
Okay, great. I can ask some of the other panelists as well too. But what could organizations like AABC or specifically ABC what could to assist you possibly in?
Um, I think one of the biggest things, and this kind of goes hand in hand with being able to sort of speak your truth and talk about, who you are and what your situation is. I think one of the conversations that came up was around personal development. And I think in personal development, it's really important to kind of recognize who you are and sort of the experiences and the journeys that you've been on. And one of the things that I think holds people with disabilities back uh, most vehemently really is not being comfortable talking about the challenges that they experience. And that's based off a lot of things. There's a lot of negative interpretations that we sort of build internally about ourselves, whether it be from bullying in elementary school, whether it be from lack of accommodation, whether it be from, parental or education worker, sometimes they try to coddle us, and as much as we try to advocate for ourselves, they sort of, push back against that. And I think that building those internal representations and holding on to those to the point where you're not comfortable enough to sort of speak up and say, "Hey, these are my challenges. This is what I need from you," and kind of push back a little bit and be assertive when you run into experiences where people are sort of not listening to you. And kind of standing up for yourself in that regard. And I think personal development, especially around like motivation, um, you know, therapeutic services or kind of getting people together in groups is really effective for allowing people to learn from each other and really kind of allowing those who are not as comfortable with speaking their truth meet those who have and sort of learn from them through experiential learning.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Brandon. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Wajiha. And sorry, Wajiha, I didn't get your last name earlier when you signed in, so I wasn't able to make note of it. But if you could, same questions. If you can talk about your barriers in self-advocacy and what issues came up and how did you resolve them and
Mhm.
what could AABC do for you?
Yeah, and my last name is Ajaz, Ejaz.
Ajaz, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So I think for me, something that I face a lot, especially now that I have received a service animal, is service denial. Um, Whether it's like a ride share or, even just going to a restaurant, with my family sometimes can be very frustrating. I just want to go and have a good time, but, it's like a lot of times I'm not supposed to call beforehand because, of course, guide dogs, by law belong everywhere. But just to, not go through that whole frustration, I do sometimes call and let them know that I do have a service animal. And oftentimes it's like, uh, first they had availability, and then the next second they're like, oh, we are really busy right now. um, so this is one thing I have faced a lot, even with ride shares. Like I'm waiting outside to go to maybe a doctor, like I have an important appointment, and next thing I know, um, you know um, my ride comes, I get the notification on my phone, and as soon as they see that I have a dog, they never stop. They just drive past me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what was that? So that is one thing I have faced a lot. The other thing is of course accessibility issues, inaccessible till machines. A lot of times at grocery stores now, like you know how everything is getting so updated, where um, some of us are struggling to you know use them. Also, um, sometimes with pedestrian crossings are not always accessible, and if it's like a regular route that I have to walk on and this is a busy street crossing, that can be of course really scary and unsafe. That is another one that I have faced quite a bit of. uh, Reading printed text on mails, and I have tried to like you know for official papers and stuff have requested that if I could only get digital like email, or even with my like receipts and stuff, I have requested that I would like to receive that in an email. So but that is not always you know possible, and sometimes I feel like it's like you don't have too much privacy because you have to reach out to someone to read it out for you, even if it's your phone that you're using. So that is also something that I wish there was something that could be done about that. Um, Navigating websites, of course, I know we have all probably faced it that are not screen reader friendly. You know, you're at a point where you're shopping online, you have everything in your cart, and you're not able to check out just because the website is not accessible, and some of the really renowned ones. So that's a frustrating experience as well. And at times, you not being able to use medical devices, you know, that some of us need to survive, like maybe a glucose monitor. For example, I'm type 1 diabetic, so this is also something that I have faced. Then insulin pumps is also another thing that you know that is really not accessible. And if it's not accessible and you're not able to use it safely, it can be you know dangerous. So these are some of the barriers and issues that I have faced. What I have done about them, of course, for my guide dog, I do have, because I'm based in Ontario, we do have a, um, I have reported service denial to the rideshare, and have it has resulted in removal of the you know the drivers from the platform at times, which I do appreciate, but you know it is still a frustrating experience. You have to get to an appointment on time and you're not able to make it just because of you know someone um, doesn't want to abide by the law. um, and of course, with restaurants, I have advocated for my rights with like, you know, have because I do have a um, legal right card that I have received from the government of Ontario that states that you know my dog is a service animal, and denial in service can result in $5,000 fine. So that has worked, but not every time. Um, I have spoken to the city where I needed audible pedestrian crossings, and this is something I learned from my teacher, my trainer, Linda. So this is something I've been using a lot of. So I do connect with the city, and you know, advocacy I know is something that I've learned a lot from Linda. So definitely always calling and getting in touch with them, like, hey, this is my regular route. I need you to you know please consider this. And I understand there is a budget, but sometimes like when I was in living in Toronto, there was this one crossing that was very dangerous and it was not accessible, and I had to take a way longer route to be able to get where I needed to go, just because that one major intersection was not accessible for me. And I called the city at least 6 times, and finally they were like, oh, you know, we are planning to get it get it done by 2025. So this year it will be done, but I'm not in Toronto anymore.
Anymore. Yes.
Yeah. Um, Also, with like I shared with with mails, I have requested the digital wherever I can, so that really helps with being able to read whatever is on the paper. Um, for the restaurants, I always just check the menu online. This is one solution I have found. It works, or you can just ask the servers. Um, and for the insulin pump, I have reached out to the companies directly and have shared with them that a lot of type 1 diabetics are visually impaired, and we would love to be able to use those insulin pumps. But if and I've also shared how they can make them accessible, like having an accessible app on your phone that you can use to overall just be able to give yourself the dose that you need without having to rely on the pump or physical buttons. Um, so yeah, these are some of the challenges and some of the stuff that I have done to advocate for these issues that I have faced.
Great, thank you very much, Wajiha. And what kind of things do you think AEBC could do to assist you? You mentioned some areas, I see sort of the well, Brandon mentioned peer support, but I think there's some things that based on when you talk about web accessibility, like do you think AEBC could provide resources on how to assist people be more aware of what an accessible website is, or how to advocate for accessible kiosks and things like that? Would that be useful, or what other things do
I
you think?
Yeah, I think that would be great if we could have something like that, because I find it really frustrating to be dealing with a web page that is not accessible, and you're like, okay, what do I do now? So having like a mentor or someone, or just even having this discussion, frequent discussions can be very helpful, where we can get together and talk about possible solutions. I think this would be great.
Oh, great. Thank you very much for your insights on this topic. And now we'll move to Joshua Fitzsimmons. And if you can, the same thing, like self-advocacy, barriers in the community, what issues may have come up for you? What did you do to resolve them as well?
Hmm. I think a lot of them were covered by Vegeta, and um, uh, we touched on a lot of bases. I'll just piggyback on a couple of them. In my primarily in most of my years, I was in the low vision category, and I've only in the past 10 years become a member of the tribe of those that are legally blind. And I think the self-advocacy uh, does come in the daily way you comport yourself, the way you behave with everybody in the world. I think in many ways we're a poster child for each other for blindness and vision loss. And I think it's always important to know that you are presenting yourself for someone else, like anyone else in this group, for the next person who is going to interact with any of us to help educate along the way. So I often have become much more proactive in asking those around me what I need. And I'm not as bothered as much with this initial sense of dependency. Perhaps it's a function of my work and clinical work, but seeing things as more of an interdependency that while you can't see people's mental health issues, everyone has some level of stuff going on. And I'm not quite as burdened with my own fumbling around or asking for help to alleviate that as I think many is particularly initially involved with vision loss, having to overcome that hurdle, having been around a lot of people who are vision loss much more severe for 30 years or so of my life. that transition made it a lot easier. So being involved around people who did have vision loss made this transition easier. And I guess the other aspect was the invisibleness of mental health does have a certain irony when you can't see. So I don't get too worked up about people not able to help or systems not able to help because they're generally self-centered, and vision is a very powerful sensory function that people rely on. And we live in a world where people aren't easily being able to put themselves in anyone else's shoes of their own. And that kind of self-centeredness is really florid when it comes to vision loss. So I never see anyone trying to maliciously trying to make my life more difficult, but they either don't know how or don't know how to relate. It's very, very rare I've met people who are maliciously trying to make my life more difficult, or systems that are just engineered without anyone else in their mind but their own. Um, when it comes to what ABC can do, having the opportunity to kind of be a bit of an old fogey in an academic setting and seeing such young, vibrant people who have a vision loss go through schooling um, is um, that many of the people who have vision loss are quite adept at advocating and overcoming a lot of barriers themselves. I see a particular need, particularly now in this time of trends and accepting diversity on many levels, for ABC to perhaps be more active in helping the employers, uh, desensitize them to see opportunities and to break down barriers from the inside from a business perspective so that both ends are doing their work in terms of we advocating the best that we can and working and not letting us be complacent and having a sense of agency, but also making employers less skeptical, breaking down stigmas and seeing opportunities for a very well, educated and socialized person that can contribute to their workforce. And so breaking down that barrier, I think would be helpful for ABC to make the employer more involved in the process.
No, I'm unmuted. I was just going to say thank you and realized I was still muted. So thank you very much, Joshua, for your insights on this topic. Last but not least, Amanda Cape, if you the same questions, the self-advocacy barriers in the community, what issues that did you have that may have come up with that may have been a result of your blindness or vision loss, and then and what kinds of things do you think AABC could do to assist that would assist you?
So I'd say for me, it centers a lot on employment. Um, finding a job that has accessible softwares or accessible platforms, things like that. And I think that ABC could help maybe by encouraging organizations to make their platforms more accessible and also the peer mentorship type thing.
Okay, and then so what did you like? What did you have any specific issues that that have come up for you, and what kinds of things did you do to resolve them, and did you have any sort of results, positive or negative, or?
Um, I don't have any recent concrete examples, but there's always, issues with. So when I was working at a private practice counseling place, their software for inputting notes and um, like their client record management system, that whole system wasn't accessible. And so they developed workarounds that involved other people and helping me through that. But then I was relying on other humans to, be competent at what they were doing and do things in a timely fashion and things like that. So it was kind of a band-aid solution.
But which did resolve your particular issue, but not potentially
Not a
put
long-term
a system.
solution.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Thank you all very much. And now I'll pass it off to Linda for our next section.
Yeah, so I'd like to talk a little bit. We've hit on some of these things, some of these ideas in terms of what specific programs AEBC could be offering. That's the first question. And you've mentioned some, but if there's some others that come to mind, I'd like to hear about them. We'd like to hear about them. And also to talk about how do we get younger blind, deafblind, and partially sighted individuals more engaged within the AEBC organization? What can we do to attract more young people to join us, to participate, to be involved? What are we missing? And what do we need to do, and how do we connect? So I'll start with Josh.
Sure. I think one gap that might be helpful to attract younger people, as I've seen people do their internships and hearing the current voices on the panel, I think there's a particular um, gap in terms of perhaps making advocacy or inroads to certain types of work, certain employers that can provide stages or internships for people that would want to experience early on, even in high school, where they could spend a bit of time in a certain workplace with someone who can be sighted. It doesn't have to be, I mean, it has to start somewhere. We all wait for that one person who happens to have a vision loss in a given area take a lot longer. So um, I would say that perhaps being the bridge between the corporate world or any type of um, service providing that ABC can make inroads, provide a mentorship or guidance from a young an age as possible, again, high school or college, as an employment opportunity in these certain professions. And it could break down a lot of barriers. It could perhaps open up the eyes of not just the employer, but these young people that these jobs are certainly within their possibilities. And I think it would attract um, both the employer and employees to look at ABC as a bit of a helpful guide in that employment process.
Okay, thank you. I'll move to Brandon. Brandon, are you still with us? You might be muted.
Yep, it was hard. Sorry, I was having some difficulty
Okay, no
unmuting.
problem.
I absolutely love what Josh was saying just there, and I think that's a really sort of great angle to go to approach this from, specifically because I feel as if in a lot of cases, blind people, especially when it comes to employment, are sort of put into this box where there are a handful of occupations that we kind of perceive ourselves as being really good at or being really effective with. Massage therapy is one of them. Technology is also a big one. Is um, you know, and then y- obviously there are the ones like the call centers and things like that that a lot of our community are finding their employment at. But what's the rest of it? What about the rest of the world? Because there are so many professions that with just a little bit of accessibility adaptation, we could really get involved with and really kind of flourish in. So what Josh was suggesting, I think, is great, and I think the main way to do it is to just touch on, and when it comes to attracting younger people to AEBC, I think it's really about touching on the pain points that we as blind people experience. That's things like the employment, that's things like the schooling, that even social kind of working to sort of build your social skills and um, kind of broach those fears of talking to people or getting out and doing things, joining social groups, and um, one kind of specific, if you're looking for specific ideas, and I think CNIB did this for a little while, is maybe even looking to get like a Toastmasters involvement with AEBC. And I know people hear public Toastmasters and they think public speaking and immediately go into panic mode, but it's not always about giving big, lavish speeches. It's also about increasing your confidence and being willing to talk to people and sort of exploring the ways that you can go about forms of communication and being a little bit more open to that idea.
Sounds good. Thank you. Okay, Wajiha.
Okay, so I think something that could really help younger folks um, would be, especially to attract them to ABC, would be um, offering more like facilitating workshops surrounding, confidence building or social etiquette. um, Technology, I know, is a big barrier that I see a lot because I do work with the blind community, and that is something I do see a lot. And that is a big barrier when it comes to either schooling um, and work. So if we could, work to provide resources to the community, where they can connect and receive this support, can really help with the confidence. Um, Even, and I don't know how possible this could be, but offering apprenticeship, and it doesn't have to be paid, but I've seen amazing results at CNIB, within my department when um, there is an internship offered, and we have these really young folks coming in, and they, even if they stay just for a year or 6 months, the growth is amazing. So maybe offering some apprenticeship positions, and like Brandon shared, um, it should involve things like, public speaking, using platforms like Microsoft Office, Zoom, all those things. These are what we consider job readiness softwares and skills, and that would help them um, develop those skills to be able to um, apply to um, open doors basically for other employment opportunities. So I think that's something, as well as I'm not sure if I've touched on this before, but offering mentorship and self-development workshops would be great for someone who is not really fully engaged with ABC, but if it's like a group session or programs, people like even like myself who are working full time can join in and just attend. So yeah, I think that's what I think would be really helpful.
Okay, thank you. And Amanda, you've been involved on the board of AEBC, so you sort of know what the workings have been in the past, few years. So what would you advise that we could do to attract more young people, or what programs should we be offering?
So I like the idea of the Toastmasters, something that I've been looking into doing in Fredericton, but I haven't had the opportunity to join a meeting. So if something was available virtually, that would be nice. And something geared towards, us as blind individuals, something that would be accessible, etc. And also maybe doing some more social type activities or events. For the younger demographic.
Okay, thank you. Got some really great ideas. So we will take these back and and work on them. Richard, back to you. I think you can
Great.
open the floor now, right?
Thank you very much. So, thank you. I'd like to thank the panelists for their valuable thoughts and insights, and hopefully we'll be able to take something from that and use it to enhance AEBC's youth strategy and programs as well. So the way this will work is if people just want to uh, raise their hands. So on the PC, it's Alt Y. On the phone, you're going to go to the More tab and go and scroll down to raise your hand. If you're dialed in, it's *9 to raise your hand, and to mute and unmute. To remind you again, it's Alt A on the PC, Shift Command A on the Mac. The mute and unmute button on the phone is on the bottom left-hand corner. And then if you've dialed in, it's *6. So, Marcy, if we have any hands yet,
No, we have no hands yet. Oh, we have Ryan.
yeah, okay, we have Ryan. Okay, moving on to the next person after that. No, no.
Then you get Chantal. So it's
Oh, okay.
Ryan and then Chantal.
It's just Ryan and then Chantel. Before Ryan asks this question, I did want to ask Wajiha, did you mentioned during your presentation you had actually had issues with ride platforms, so I'm assuming it's Uber. And
Mhm.
have you set up your service animal profile on the Uber app, and have you noticed any differences since you've done that, if you did?
Yes, I have. And no, I have not.
Okay,
It's
that
still the
was
same.
my
Yeah,
experience as well
yeah,
too.
yeah,
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Ryan, you have a question?
I do. Thanks, everybody, for your input. It's very valuable. It's great to have services to attract and engage the younger audiences, but where would you suggest, or how would you suggest we reach the younger adults? Because it's great to have things to offer them, but we need to find them. So what would be some of your suggestions on how we could reach younger adults?
So if anyone, you can just any one of you just feel free. It's more of a free for all. I'm not going to pick people unless if none of you speak, then I will pick someone at random.
Josh here. I'll speak to that. My thought would be is that younger people pretty tuned in to social media. So whether it be X or Facebook or any type of a larger social network, that would be one way to perhaps reach those younger groups of kids. Um, yeah, social media would be my immediate thought.
Just following up on that, we have just taken ourselves off of Twitter, which is X, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we are no longer, because we have not been connecting with people through Twitter. We've not had much of a following or whatever. I'm not a social media person, so I'm sorry if I use the wrong terminology. But which particular platforms would the rest of the panel suggest?
So social media is a great option, but I also find that a lot of the social media, even right now, it's funny because we're talking about it, but even they're starting to skew a little bit more towards inaccessibility. You have things like the most popular ones are TikTok and Instagram, and there are definitely blind people on TikTok on these platforms, and there are content creators on these platforms, and if we can are able to figure out ways that we could sort of involve ourselves in that, that would be wonderful. Making videos and kind of getting the content out. Um, if I was going to suggest anything, though, just because of the way that's sort of trending, and this is a great sort of supplementary idea, the TikTok and the Instagram. But I also think reaching out directly to organizations that are involved with the blind community, CNIB, CCB, those things, who are kind of involved with blind people of all ages and classes, and sort of having them advocate on your behalf towards their community. That way you're sort of having a direct link to those people rather than just kind of hoping they stumble upon you.
So
I think that'd be the
promoting
best thing.
partnerships there.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
about sorry, I was just gonna say, what about others? Like, there's other like, because like some blindness organizations in the States starting to use uh, Mastodon and Blue Sky. Is that something any of the panelists have had any experience with, or? And I'll take the silence as no.
And I think Wajiha was
Wajiha,
going to
sorry.
say something there.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I was just gonna suggest that, yes, I have heard TikTok is not accessible, but um, all other social media like Facebook, Instagram, and this is what a lot of blind community is on, as far as I know. Um, that is quite accessible. So starting there and promoting any events or sessions or programs that is being hosted or facilitated would be great. I also agree with, vocational partnerships with organizations like Vision Loss Rehab Canada or um, CNIB. Um, like I know as a program coordinator, we always have to refer our participants to VLRC for a lot of supports that CNIB doesn't offer. Sometimes participants are waiting for a year to get a simple basic tech support, even if it's virtual. So having definitely, other organizations who can offer that uh, could be helpful on, I think, both ends.
Great. Thank you. Um,
So we have
if no other
Chantel and Betty.
Yeah, if no other panelists have any. So next one, Chantel, then Betty. So Chantel, go ahead.
Thank you. I was listening intently when Brandon was speaking because part of what he said related to the experiences in my career with federal government. And of all employers, you would think that the federal government would follow guidelines that are set out to make sure everything is accessible to everyone. However, that isn't so. But just to try to impress upon anyone who has gainful employment, but you found workarounds to get to where you need to be and be able to do your job is great. What I found after a few years of that, and you're comfortable in your position, you want to maybe move on. You want to apply for some of these promotions that are coming up, and or at one point I actually experienced where there was people that were looking to find out what other jobs are about in the office kind of thing. So we were given the opportunity to say, well, gee, I've never been an intake person downstairs. I want to go try and do that. Or, I don't know what employment insurance does in their unit, and I'd like to try that. Well, I tried that, and I was told I couldn't go. Not because I wouldn't be able to do the job, but because I was so good at what I was doing already, I wouldn't have gained any further knowledge. But in my opinion, that wasn't for them to decide. And I think part of the problem they were afraid is that if I actually did apply for one of those positions were they to come up later, I wouldn't be able to, survive because their internal systems wouldn't be adequate for me to use. So back to my point is that would there be anything ABC could help to make sure that you can advance? Not only, we don't just need you to find that job, we don't just need you to be employed for a couple of years, we want you to be able to thrive and to be able to continue and explore more options. So could any one of you see ABC trying to, and I think I heard maybe it was Josh trying to say, if someone from ABC or a group or however they set it up, be able to speak to your employer to help facilitate some more experience. Obviously, there are some of us on this call today who are, older. We've gained a lot more experience, and we could at least assist. Maybe we're not maybe occupational therapist experts, but we certainly have lived experience. Could any of you see that happening if ABC were to work out a program that might assist with that?
Actually, an interesting point. I know I'm not involved with like the board or anything with AEBC, but Linda or Richard, I'm curious, would it be possible maybe to look at a program where, let's say, an employment lawyer came in and sort of spoke to people about what kind of rights they have as persons with disabilities when it comes to their employment? Because I think that's one thing that, going up the hierarchy, like kind of I mentioned earlier, sometimes you don't know what's available to you, especially with niche things like what rights and what sort of legal pursuits you could have if you wanted to pursue that avenue.
Yeah, and I think that's a good suggestion, Brandon, because it like maybe we need to look at that, like bring in like an expert in the area of employment rights, not as far in employment rights, the rights that you have to accommodation, but not the employment lawyers that are looking to sue employers because they haven't been accessible, and that's another option as well too. But like actually, what are like the rights, discussing the rights of what accommodations are you entitled to, and how should the employer um, assist you to the point of undue hardship as well too.
Right. I know that it sounds a bit scary sometimes, but I mean, at one point I actually had to do an exam where I was, as a blind person, I would have been allowed to bring a calculator because sighted people get to bring pens, pencils, and paper. And because I was too afraid to ask, this was early in my career, I struggled. I have a little bit of sight, and I struggled to write down it was math examples that we had to work out. And I struggled to write it all down on paper. And at one point, the officiant of the exam said to me, "You're looking for your answer to number 4. It's down on the bottom right." I had this huge pad of paper, and there was writing everywhere. I couldn't even find myself in my own paper. And it was, it's the humility that we feel that we have to get rid of, and that I'd like to see for younger people. The humility is absolutely debilitating. I, I'm not someone who gives up easy, but I'll tell you, after that exam, which I passed, no problem, but it was extremely stressful. And I would like to see young people not have to go through that just to arrive at a point where they feel they're satisfied, but it may not be the best of how you are able to manage and do more. So thank you.
Okay, so we've got Betty and then John.
So Betty?
Yes, thanks, Richard. I think we could start a Facebook group for younger people. We'd have to think of a catchy name, and we'd have to advertise it as much as we can to encourage youth to participate. But I think that might be one way to get people active and involved. I really think that AEBC should put on a conference where young people and employers and others are invited to talk about these issues and to share successes and to talk about barriers, because I think oftentimes employers don't understand how capable people who are blind or partially sighted or deafblind are. And I think if you bring people together and talk together about some of these concerns. Many of the employers now have to have, certainly government anyway, have to have accessibility plans. And I think sometimes employers, might be quite interested in, finding workarounds, but they just don't know what they can do. And I recall one of my students once who wanted to work at an immigration agency, but all of their applications were done in handwriting. And of course, she couldn't read those. So that was the end of that. And, you know, a lot of forms could be made accessible. And there's a lot of digital information floating around workplaces now that certainly didn't used to be, that could be made accessible. And I just think if we had put on a conference that was somewhere that was in person, where we talked about successes, we talked about barriers, we had a panel of people, even, you know, if we had some script writers for JAWS or whatever, or people who use NVDA, which may have some different workarounds. And if we provide examples and scenarios, I think that might go a long way to helping people, both employers and people who are blind or deafblind or partially sighted, become more comfortable with these issues, because it's so easy to just give up. But if you don't speak up and advocate for yourself in these situations, then change doesn't happen. And often change is slow in coming, but it does happen. I have a friend who's a massage therapist, and there's software that they have to use called Jane, and it was just completely horrible. And while it's not completely accessible yet, she's managed to talk to the company, and they have made considerable improvements so that she's able to use the software more effectively. But people who are blind or partially sighted or deafblind still can't book appointments, and that's part of Jane as well. And, you know, so things like that are quite, you know, frustrating to everyone. But the more we make noise about these things and, you know, publicize the issues, the more I think change will happen, even if it's gradual.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Any comments from the panelists or?
Would a conference like that be attractive to our panelists, and would you be willing to participate and possibly help out?
I think so, yeah. I'm just being cognizant of time, so I won't say much, but absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, I think the first maybe splitting it into two, where you can have a conversation with the employers, or you know, the business that you're thinking of inviting, just having a basic awareness presentation to educate them, and having the participants, or you know, folks with vision loss separately, of course, um, making sure that they're ready in every way to attend, and then bringing them together, like a networking event.
Okay.
Just
Okay.
just a thought.
Great. Well, thank you very much. We're getting close to the end of our time. So we have two hands up
Yeah,
now, so
we
I'll
have
move on to
John
John
and
Ogilvy
Diana.
and then
Can
Diana.
I get on the list? Because I don't have a hands up on my more button tab.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
under
okay. So, and
reactions,
David
probably.
Swiderski.
Yeah, you'll be after Diana.
And then I think we'll have to cut it off at that.
Then we will, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, John,
Okay, I'm unmuted, I think.
you are now, yeah.
You are.
Okay. One of the things I'm kind of wondering about, because, you know, a lot of us, especially the older people here, you know, have grown up with all the older technology from DOS 1.1 to WordPerfect and all the rest of that during our years. I'm just wondering now, because we're talking about, you know, younger people and the newer technology, where do we kind of stand that way now? And one of the things that I have experienced is a few students that were at university, and all the things they had to use there, some of them were horribly inaccessible, some of them were. Sometimes the professors worked with the students and sometimes they didn't. And I just wonder where that all stands. Because I mean, especially when they're students, if they can get through some of that stuff, maybe you know, what's current now, we'll know how how accessible it's going to be and what their challenges are now compared to when we were doing it in the old days. Okay, that's it.
Okay, thank you, John. Who would like to start, or any thoughts from any of the panelists on? Since
Try not to
there's
be the
no
only one who
thoughts on the
talks.
yeah, I was going to say, since there's no thoughts from the panelists, like I had some thoughts on the technology issue, but but if anyone else has anything to say.
Go
Yeah,
ahead
go
and
ahead.
share your thoughts, Richard.
Yeah, so I think, John, it's a good point. Like, and I'm another one that grew up not with DOS 1. I wasn't not quite yet in that age group, but DOS 3, and I definitely have seen. And I think in some ways technology has made things better, but worse, because it's changing so quickly, and that it's harder to keep up. And so, like young people, especially young people studying, like have maybe access to more information, but then because there's been this sort of push to move education online, there's still some significant gaps, and you don't realize what the gaps are until you're actually involved in a course. Like I am in a course myself right now, and I didn't realize. I just made an assumption that the table that was in the diagram in the text actually was formatted the way I was supposed to format my spreadsheet, and then thankfully, where it was a group assignment, the other group members said, "Oh, no, you need the columns for every week of the project." But the sample the information printed in the tag for the diagram didn't indicate that. It just showed column G as your total weeks, and I didn't realize that what it should have said is the actual visual showed. In this case, the sample project was a 35-week project. It actually showed 35 additional columns on the spreadsheet. So things like that, that are forgotten because whoever might have tagged it didn't see it. They didn't think it was crucial information in the end as well too. So it's yeah, like things are technology has been great. Like it's like we can do things nowadays that we never could do 20 years ago. But on the other hand, there's still a lot of things that are inaccessible. What the next question we have is from Diana and then David, and then we'll have to wrap up.
Many of your comments, and particularly Chantel's discussion about educating employers, made me think. I was young once. I'm not now, but I was once. And the very first job I had was as a typist. And at that time, they recorded materials and gave it to the typist to type. And I went for my 6-month interview, and the employer didn't really know what to ask me. He just kept saying, "Oh, you're doing wonderful, blah, blah, blah." And I'm thinking, well, maybe, but it would have been helpful to be able to, not necessarily criticism, but have some pointers. And I said, all of the people around me that are doing the same job I am doing are complaining because they keep getting work back, and they have to redo it because not always is their work bad, but the person they're working for has changed some things, so they have to retype them. So I said, I know I'm a good typist, but I never get my work back. And I said, why is that? And he said to me, I know you can't fix the work that you get back, because what they did is wrote all over the copies of how they wanted the changes, and they knew I couldn't read them. So they were taking this work that should have gone back to me and gave it to other stenos to do. And I said, you really can't do that. I said, that's not how, people are going to resent me for having to do extra work. And so I said, could we have a basket where that work is returned, and I'll go to the other stenos, because they were quite right. I could not do this work. But I went to the other stenos. I parceled it out and took some of their new work that they hadn't done that was still on recording and traded it so that I would have never known if I hadn't asked that this was happening. So you always have to pay attention to the work dynamics, and nobody ever hinted that they, didn't like doing my work. But if I hadn't sort of paid attention to the sounds around me and the complaints that others were making, and I didn't have to make, I never would have thought that this was an issue. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is, for people coming into employment situations, it's often a second guessing thing that you have to do in order to make sure that you're able to pull your weight, and you have to be resourceful. Sometimes you do things way differently, but you have to be resourceful in finding ways to make things work for both you and the organization. And employers should be creative and be thinking of some of those things, but they often don't. So that's my comment.
Great. Thank you, Diana, and hi to Ken in the background.
You did. I was trying.
Yeah. Any comments from the panelists, or should we move on to our last question?
Just real quick, I did want to mention that I love what Diana was saying about being resourceful and sort of figuring out problems, creative problem solving. Like in my my behavioral psychology degree, we had to do a lot of things with line graphs, especially when we were tracking different data sets and whatnot. And that's all done in Excel using different pointers, and you have to be able to use a mouse. And I couldn't do that, but I was required to in order to complete my degree. So luckily, I had a very, very kind of attentive professor, and what we did was we actually got some. We bought a cookie sheet. The school funded a cookie sheet. We got some magnets, and we got some silly putty, and we almost made like an art project out of it, where I made the line graph completely tactile using these elements. And I ended up, coming through that just fine. But it was a creative problem-solving solution that you sort of had to, put your head down and kind of think outside the box. But there is where there is a will, there is a way, and even if these things are not accessible, as long as we're willing to sort of be flexible, we can figure it out.
And David, you had a question?
Actually, a couple of comments in terms of our ABC chapter did like public information sessions. We sent out, we had like social nights. We sent out flyers to get new members. It never really worked all that well. I don't know what the answer is, but my other comment is that I think employers have to step up to the plate, because right now their attitudes are, oh, I can do this a lot cheaper with a sighted person, because if I have to hire a disabled person, now I have to spend money to get adaptive technology and get things accessible, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And my third comment, I don't know, we used to have something called CCRW out there, getting disabled people with employers together to discuss issues and how to get around barriers, how to fix barriers. I don't know whatever happened to that. I thought that was a great program, and wondering whatever happened to that.
They still exist. I worked for them not too long ago, and I know some people who are going through them even now. So that also could be another great resource, David.
I used to hear a lot about them. I don't hear much about them anymore like I used to. Or they're not just posting their information about on wherever, or I'm not hearing a lot about them anymore like I used to.
So another possible reaching out for a partnership there, or finding out what they're up to and seeing where we fit.
Yeah,
definitely.
That's good. Okay, great. So Linda, I don't know if you still want to talk about
I'm
the youth
just gonna
strategy.
very
If you want to do
quickly.
your best impersonation of Lee.
Lee isn't here. Lee's on a beach somewhere right now.
Okay.
So I just quickly to say that we got some, with our grant that we got from ESDC, we got some funding to put together a youth strategy, and it's part of our requirements. So we will, this is, I guess, step one. And we'll be, facilitating more opportunities for people to speak, roundtables or panels or whatever, surveys, and coming up with some more ideas. There's been some really great ideas shared today. I hope that all of you will stay involved, and we will and speak to your peers, and especially those who are younger, who are looking in school or looking for employment or early in their careers, and that we can continue to be, to be relevant for that demographic. I'd like to thank all of our panelists today for participating, giving us of their time and their lived experience, and for all of you who joined us today for this presentation. Any final remarks, Richard?
No, I think you've covered it, and thank you again to all the panelists as well. And it was very insightful, and definitely would encourage you to continue your involvement with AEBC. And we can I know in this case today youth was a little subjective, but helping us to sort of attract the younger members to the organization, and help getting us to help them be more effective advocates is our goal, and also helping us sort of develop the next generation of leadership that the organization may need to move toward better, greater equality in society.
Thank you.